So, when we're talking about abortion, I want to show this clip from Kathy Tran. She is somebody who presented in Virginia a bill talking about late-term abortions. So we'll just get into it.
This bill would remove the following statutes: trap or targeted regulations of abortion providers, removing language classifying facilities that perform 5 or more first trimester abortions per month as hospitals. It would repeal Virginia's informed consent mandatory ultrasound and 24-hour delay. It would repeal the requirement that second trimester abortions be performed in a hospital licensed by the State Department of Health. It would repeal the requirement for 2 additional physicians in cases of third trimester abortions.
Delegate Tran,
Yes, sir.
how late in a pregnancy would your bill apply if a physician was simply willing to certify that the continuation of the pregnancy would impair the mental health of the woman? How late are we talking about?
Well, so the suggestion that we've made in the bill is to say it's in the third trimester and at the, with the certification of the physician. So
how late in the third trimester would you be able to do that?
it's very unfortunate that our physicians, witnesses, were not able to attend today to speak specifically.
No, I'm
to
talking
that.
about your bill. How late in the third trimester could a physician perform an abortion if he indicated it would impair the mental health of the woman?
Or physical health.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm talking about the mental health.
All right, so just real quick. So if you notice with this bill, what they're trying to push, first of all, it's amazing to me that this is just talked in the parameters of third trimester, as if the first and second trimester are irrelevant in this case, which is horrific.
Like, it's not really a baby. So in the third trimester, it's more like a baby. So we care more about the third trimester.
Yeah. That's second trimester is what, 26 weeks? At the end of 26 weeks is the end of
I think 28 weeks.
28 weeks is the end of the second trimester. That's already super late. I mean, anytime an abortion is done is evil and wicked in the sight of God, first and foremost. But if you notice, the only parameter here is late term, third trimester. That's what they're arguing over. They're not even considering the wickedness of the abortion decision between the first and second trimester. That's not even on the table anymore. That's where the country is. This is where America is headed to, where the conversation of morality is no longer even starting from the beginning. It's already assumed that the first and second trimester are okay to abort the baby, at least in politics. And this bill that they're trying to push in Virginia will allow abortions to the point of giving birth.
They're even starting to try to push for infanticide,
which we're going to get into right now. Because there's one clip from a senator. His name is Ralph Northam. He is pushing this idea of post-birth abortion, which is terrible.
which are saying that if the mother is not mentally well, if she has some sort of like breakdown or whatever, does not want the baby anymore, then she's more than capable to say, I don't want this baby anymore, and they just go ahead and murder the baby. Cindy said, I will continue to watch in the morning. Good night.
Good night. Yes, so if you notice, he's talking specifically about mental health, and she tries to push in and physical health. And he's like, yeah, but I'm talking about mental health because...
Yeah, but see, even then, like, there's no scenario where you have a physical ailment at that end stage where they would abort your baby. There's no way. They could easily just do a C-section, pull the baby out, and then your baby will be fine.
Yeah, for I mean the medical advances that have taken place
It
are
does.
amazing.
It doesn't make sense because in order to do an abortion at that age, they literally have to induce you. You go through hours and hours, possibly days, for your body to actually be able to open up in order
Right.
to have the baby, which is crazy to me because I'm like, if this is truly like a medical emergency, there is nobody that's going to take
Right.
days.
Well, the thing was, there was always those cases where if the mother's life was in jeopardy, then the physician and the wife and the husband or the family would make a decision together on whether or not they would, you know, would have to kill the baby in order to save the mother's life.
Yeah, and
that was
even in
always an option.
and even
before.
in that case, it would always be C-section. They will pull the baby out.
Right.
It would never. They would never induce the mother.
Right, because it's an emergency.
Yeah.
Yeah, you you won't put a mother in labor when she's in an emergency. But that's always was an option. It's not like there was a mass amount of women prior to Roe v. Wade where they were like, I'm gonna die if you don't kill the baby in the womb, then I'm gonna die or something like that. And the physician was like, sorry, we don't allow abortions in this country.
No, and I think the reason for that it was because women were a lot more careful when it came to having sex. They would use birth controls and they were more careful with that. They would make sure that they would not get pregnant because there was no availability of having an abortion back then.
Well, yeah, the consequences of sex were a lot more recognized prior to Roe v. Wade.
Yes, because people had to be responsible for their actions. So if they weren't responsible with their whether using a condom or using a pill or for whatever they used for contraceptive,
Yeah.
then they were aware, if I don't use this, I'm going to be pregnant and I'm going to have to raise this child. So they were a lot more responsible in that case. Now, because they don't have to be responsible when it comes to having children, there's the option of just having an abortion, and abortion is just normalized now. Like if
Right.
you know, if you want to have fun, and then there's always the option of going ahead and having an abortion. I think it's only like $400
Yeah.
to have an, like, it's crazy how cheap it is to be able to get rid of a life.
And what's even sadder is I think the country has become so calloused to this idea that when videos come out about children that are ripped apart and their organs being sold or their body parts being sold, and video evidence of them talking about it, almost like if it's trading cards or something like that.
I know, and a lot of the time they say, "Oh, it's a fake video.
It's a fake video. It's doctored, or it's,
yeah,
and it's like, dude, they're talking about selling babies' body parts.
yeah."
And the country is so callous that they could care less at this point. They either don't believe it, or if they do believe it, they're just like, well, what are you going to do? It's not really a baby. It's just a fetus, which just means baby in Latin. But it's just a fetus. So it's just lifeless tissue or something like that. And so, but if you notice that the conversation has shifted from the health of the mother to the mental health of the mother. So when there was a real physical issue taking place with the mother, the decision whether or not to let the child die in order for the mother to live, that was always an option. But now it's to the point where the mental health of the mother is an issue.
It's crazy because people know, like, this is known a lot more now, that women go through depression while they're pregnant. And they go through postpartum depression. And a lot of it has to do because of our hormones changing. And it is just crazy to me that they're allowing that depression to cloud and say, oh, well, she doesn't want the baby right now. But a lot of those mothers regret having the abortion because they were depressed at that time. There's a point where they get over that depression, they overcome it, and then they're left with no baby because a physician said it was okay for her to have an abortion when she was at her lowest point. Her hormones are off.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that the the political atmosphere is pushing this liberty for women's choices and women's rights to their own bodies, which it's not consistent in their position or in their point of view, because the child has its own body and the mother has her own body. But again, the conversation has now shifted from physical health to mental health. So now, even if the mother says, it's just not going to be good for my emotional state, that's reason enough now to abort the child. And that's not, now this bill in Virginia was pushing the idea that this is even now allowed till the 3rd trimester, which means if at the point of giving birth, the mother is, I just don't think this child's going to be good for my mental stability. That's reason enough to kill the child 40 weeks formed.
So, I mean, through the 3rd trimester. The 3rd trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks.
Okay, but to the end of the 3rd trimester.
Yep, I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
So, where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, she has physical signs that she is about to give a birth, would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would
I understand
make at
that. I'm
that
asking
point.
if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
I certainly could have said a week from her due date, and that would have been the same answer, correct?
That it's allowed in the bill, yes.
Yes. And in addition to what you just represented, you do acknowledge that you substantially changed the standard by removing a couple of words here, correct?
From 2 to 1.
Substantially and irremediably.
like-
I'm sorry, line 80. Line 80.
I'm sorry, can you just tell me, I think I'm in the right part that you're looking at as well.
Line 80.
Line 80, you are changing the standard under which the
Yeah.
judgment
Yes,
call is made.
I'm aware.
Okay, 3rd trimester.
for an abortion at any point in the 3rd trimester. You're changing the standard.
I'm changing
for
the
that.
standard, yes.
Okay, all right. What type of mental health conditions would you anticipate would be utilized by physicians under these circumstances to determine that a child that is otherwise viable is worthy of an abortion?
I mean, again, I'm not a physician, so I can't make those calls as to when a
she's the
physician
one
would
that's writing
determine
the
that
bill.
A woman's mental health is, would,
my
Yeah, that's the madness of
where they
this.
would be able to
Know
certify an
what is
abortion
in
at that
her
point.
bill,
But the
'cause she
doctor, the
wrote it.
physician wouldn't have to have any specialized training in mental health to make that determination under your bill.
This is really
right?
important.
Under this bill, no.
Okay. All right, thank
All
you.
right. So if you notice that at the end, this push on mental health, what they were saying is it can be based upon the physician's decision with the mother on the state of her mental health, on whether or not they should be aborting this child this late into the pregnancy. And if you notice, his question was very, very good. He said, does the physician need to have any prior training in mental health in order to make a determination with the mother?
And she said no.
And she said no. That is the reality of where this country is headed. That's just in one state, but this is getting pushed more and more in the United States because the rights of the woman over the child are becoming the dominant position. So as long as the woman says to the physician who has no prior training, I don't think this child is going to be good for my mental health. And the doctor says, okay, so what? And I guess a series of questions. They didn't really explain or go on to explain how they were to determine or make that determination. If the mother says, well, I'll probably be suicidal, or it won't be good for my emotional state, I may be depressed, I might not even feed the baby or whatever. Then the doctor who has no prior training in mental health can say, this is not good for the mother. Check the box. Abortion at 40 weeks.
Yeah, because any person that is in been trained in the mental health, has a degree in psychiatric training,
Yeah.
would say, no, this is like postpartum depression. Like, no.
Right.
Anyone would recognize those signs and say, no, this woman is just depressed. Just give her some pills. She will be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, so the next clip we're going to be looking at is this senator from Virginia also. His name is Ralph Northam. And he comments on this bill. And this is what his comment is on this bill.
Turn back to NBC4's Julie Carey.
And governors, you know, the issue of abortion rights emerges every year in the General Assembly session. This year, no exception. There was a very contentious committee hearing yesterday when Fairfax County Delegate Kathy Tran made her case for lifting restrictions on third trimester abortions, as well as other restrictions now in place. And she was pressed by a Republican delegate about whether her bill would permit an abortion, even as a woman is essentially dilating, ready to give birth. And she answered that it would permit an abortion at that stage of labor. Do you support her measure and explain her answer?
Yeah, and I wasn't there, Julie, and I certainly can't speak for Delegate Tran, but I would tell you first thing I would say, this is why decisions such as this should be made by providers, physicians, and the mothers and fathers that are involved. There are, when we talk about third trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion. But again, we want the government not to be involved in these types of decisions. We want the decision to be made by the mothers and their providers. And this is why, Julie, that legislators, most of whom are men, by the way, shouldn't be telling a woman what she should and shouldn't be doing with her body.
And do you think multiple physicians should have to weigh in, as is currently required? She's trying to lift that requirement.
Well, I think it's always good to get a second opinion and for at least two providers to be involved in that decision, because these decisions shouldn't be taken lightly. And so, I would certainly support more than one provider.
All right, let's go back.
All right. So that is the wicked response of a senator who wants to see children murdered in the womb and also post-womb. I mean, he doesn't say it outright, okay? He doesn't say...
No, but
Yeah.
he even states like worst case scenario if they have deformities or some disease or something. And the reality is
That's
they're
not what the
using
bill was
that.
pushing.
No,
Yeah.
it is not. But they're using that in order to be able to get people to say, oh yeah, sometimes babies are born with deformities and, their quality of life will not be very good. Those scenarios are like 0.0 something percent. Like it's such a low percentage that it is crazy that they're trying to push that. Just like saying, oh, women should be allowed to have an abortion, especially if they get raped. The scenario of that happening is such a low percentage,
make
but
that the
they
norm- the
use
normative,
those
yeah.
scenarios in order to push their agenda.
Yeah. They try to use the smallest scenario or the most
Improbable.
scenario to try to push the agenda or try to push. And what it tries to do is it tries to make you irrational. It tries to make you emotional towards it rather than logical. And so the problem that I see here with this notion is he was trying to use scenarios where in most likelihood the child will die after birth anyways. Like, have you ever seen the child that's not formed without
Without a brain.
without a brain, or there is a brain but it's
Like caved
exposed or something like that? And usually a good mother will give birth to that child, spend whatever time she has with that child, give it its birth bath or whatever, give it kisses on its cheek, and then when it dies, it dies. But she cherishes those moments so much because she's a good mother. She loves that child. Same thing with the father. So when they're trying to push this idea of when there's deformities formed in the child, that's not what the bill was presenting.
No.
So he's
No, he's changing it to make it more palpable.
yeah, of course, he's lying.
Mm-hmm.
He's using these worst case scenarios
Mm-hmm.
to try to justify the usage of this bill when that was not what the bill was presented
Yeah.
as. The bill was presented as not
Women's
as
mental health.
yeah, not as the deformity of the child, but the woman's mental health. And there is that question, and here's a good question that maybe we can talk about, because there are some who believe. I think Jeff Durbin and his church, they believe that the government should either incarcerate or put to death mothers who have abortions for murdering their child. What do you think? What do you think? Do you think that's a
I think that would be a good thing to put. Or I think I would just change it to mothers should not be allowed to have an abortion, because that would put responsibility back onto the parent. The parents, adults, teenagers, whatever, would be more responsible because they knew there is no availability for me to have an abortion. So I have to be responsible. If I mess up, I'm going to have a child, and that's it.
Well, here's the problem that I see with this nation is we've gotten to a point to even ask or even talk about incarcerating a woman for killing their child
And
is considered an immorality.
And I think they should be, because that's murder.
Yeah,
That's
if,
murder.
If you were to kill that same child post-abortion, you go to jail.
Post-abortion?
I mean, post-birth. Post-birth.
Post-birth.
If you were to kill that child post-birth, you go to jail.
Yeah.
Or you get the death sentence, depending on
Exactly.
on the
And that's the
egregiousness of it.
same thing, only with a layer of skin or two over it.
And here's why we can say this is because we believe life is valuable. We believe that the child in the womb is valuable, and we can adhere to that standard of justice, where we believe that if a woman has the abortion, they should be incarcerated, or they should pay for the penalty
Yeah.
of murdering that child in the womb. Because if you were to dismember the child outside of the womb, that would be a horrific crime, like terrible. It would be one of the worst crimes to be seen, to cut a child up into pieces after giving birth.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it's fine to do it in the womb, to cut the baby up in pieces. And here's something I want to say. I want to get into also. Having a Republican Party, having a Republican or conservative majority Supreme Court I don't think is going to change Roe v. Wade. Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, I don't think are going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Contrary to the popular belief of the most conservatives that really believe that when Trump was elected president that he was somehow going to be the champion of the aborted children.
I think from my perspective, I think I didn't say he was going to be the champion, but I hoped that because he was against abortion, I hoped. And I mean, we have seen in a few different scenarios where he has fought back. He's pushed back when it comes to abortion. It's not where I wish it would be. It is a little better than it was before, but we still see, because he's giving the states back their, what is it called? When he's giving them back their ability to make different laws for their states. We see different states are coming out with late-term abortions versus other states who have completely are against abortion.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of states right now that are trying to pass laws that
Ban abortion.
completely.
Yeah.
And if Christians who live in that state are not going out in mass to vote for these bills,
Then,
they should be ashamed.
yes.
Because if that was a situation in California,
we would
be
the
out
first.
there in the voting
Yes.
booth.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not a very big voter. So
Yeah.
that's a huge issue. Any issue that we have to be able to vote for directly vote for something that coincides specifically with Scripture, we should be out there
Yes.
voting.